Gabriella, we have heard a lot about how learning and skilling has become so important in the current times. And for years, there have been debates around why HR hasn't been able to take a seat at the table. However, as the world of work gets more disrupted and the talent market becomes employee-centric, CHROs and their teams are leading boardroom meetings as work and people become CEO's top agenda. In this evolving role of HR, how do you see the role of L&D becoming imperative? And how are their goals evolving from just people goals to business goals, Gabriella?
Absolutely, and I think the first key area where we get involved in is really having stronger strategic workforce planning. So particularly once the business strategy is set, it's really important to come in and start speaking about, okay, so what does it take for us to achieve on this business strategy from a people side? Do we have the right talent in place? And if not, can we source or can we attract that talent into the organization? And then also we need to have a conversation around, do we have the right skills, capability, and knowledge to deliver on that agenda? And if no, are we going to upskill? Are we perhaps going to change roles and reskill people? So with these conversations, now it's no longer just, let's talk about what learning programs we're going to deliver this year, but it really speaks to what are we going to do to enable and drive the strategy forward.
That's a very interesting point. I think once you align your business strategy with your workforce strategy, that's the way forward for organizations. Now, what kind of jobs do you require? What kind of skills are required to kind of fulfill those job roles? Are there new skills that your people need to be, equipped on? So I think these are very interesting points. And the L&D teams, the HR teams have to work together with business, as you very rightly said, to form a business strategy that is aligned with your workforce strategy. So thanks so much for sharing that, Gabriella.
Absolutely.
Yes, with changing ways of work and business, each function has evolved and changed itself to keep up with the future of work. How do you think the current L&D functions can reinvent themselves to win this war for talent and also enable businesses to thrive in the future?
There were a couple of things that we've really been looking at and focusing more over the last 1 or 2 years. The first one, I think, is really how do we bring to life this whole concept of learning in the flow of work? Gone are the days where people have a whole week to come in for a training program and be fully dedicated to learning. I mean, this is not something that is going to be available moving forward. So we need to really think about how do we help employees find what they need to be able to do their job better when they need it, in a place that's easier for them to access. So with this, we look a lot at how can we make content available in a virtual context? How can we have more e-learning available that people can search and find when needed? How do we think about the reality of the workforce, where time is becoming a really big luxury and people have, very short pockets of time available in the day where they can really dedicate to go and learn. So moving from your big learning journeys, perhaps to bite-sized micro-learning concepts that can really give them what they need in a much shorter time. And then also thinking about, and this is a big one for us, how do we democratize learning? So we are toying a lot with the concept of, does learning have to come from the L&D function? And for us, we believe that the answer is no, not always. So really trying to create these opportunities for peer learning, and that's something that we've really been looking at and playing with quite a lot for the last period.
That's very interesting. I think the points that you made, that it is in the kind of times we are living in and the kind of workforce structure we have, the kind of way people are working in a hybrid remote environment, it's very important to create a learning culture which enables people to learn in the flow of work, which gives them those bite-sized learning modules, micro learning modules, and which also gives them the option to choose how, when, and what they want to learn. That's going to be very important. And Gabriella, how about your own L&D team? How are you kind of, upskilling them to match up with the latest trends, what's happening in the market, what knowledge, what skills is required to meet business and talent needs? Are there any specialized programs and initiatives for your L&D teams in particular that you have introduced?
So we definitely try to leverage all opportunities, like things that your organizations are organizing. So we keep very much in touch with conferences and networks within the region and beyond the region, because we believe a lot in peer-to-peer learning. So we try to leverage that very much. The second thing is we're very clear of where we have capabilities and where we're lacking them. So one of the areas that we have brought into the organization is the whole e-content development capabilities. And that was something that we didn't have in the past. And here what we do is we match our e-content developers with our program designers, so that there is also an opportunity for cross learning between the two. So that's another element that we put in place. Another area that is quite important for us is the whole LXP, the learner experience whenever they are using our learning management system, whenever they're taking an e-learning course. We really want to make sure that is there. And for this, we partner quite closely with our HRIS vendor, so that we keep up to date as much as possible with the latest trends. So I would say learning from each other, learning from our partners that we work closely with, and then having really a strong network within our area of interest.
All right, great. That's really interesting. I think peer-to-peer learning going forward is going to be very important, as you said, and for your L&D teams to network with the larger community outside and figuring out what kind of skills are developing, how are L&D teams reinventing themselves for the new world of work is going to be very important. Gabrielle, as a talent development leader, what has been your own personal learning on approaching skilling and learning for the workforce? How can a leader, a learning leader specifically, and teams successfully drive skilling programs?
I think the first and foremost thing is to partner with the business so that you are crystal clear with what is the end goal, so what is it that we're trying to achieve? And once we have that sort of clarity, it's then important to go a level deeper. So what does this mean for the different types of employees that we have? Because trying to have a blanket approach, a one size fits all, is obviously not the solution. So really trying to understand who needs what, and then trying to see where do I have those pockets of talent within the organization that I can leverage to bring this learning forward, so that we can work collaboratively between the learning and development team, but also leveraging on internal experts that we can surface up and really bring to the forefront to drive some of these learnings. And then making sure that, yes, once we develop programs, we're also thinking about how can we help the business to drive on-the-job learning and creating those opportunities to stop, to reflect, to learn from each other, so that learning really becomes more ingrained and embedded.
Great, Gabriel. Can you share a few examples of how are you driving that culture within Al-Futtaim Group? Any initiatives that you can tell us about? How do you enable and empower people to learn on their own, learn in the flow of work?
So we try to make a lot of elements available to them in terms of where they can go to find learning, where it is that they can access. We have different collaborative sites where we curate content that is available for them, but they also then have the opportunity to interact within that group, ask questions, you know, get support from each other. So that is what we already have in place. What we would like to start playing with now is the element of communities of practice. So digital transformation is a big piece for us, and one of the areas we'd like to get this going is perhaps around data analytics and how do we manage and leverage our data. And this is where we want to create a community of practice that goes beyond the different divisions and brings those minds together to speak about what is of interest to them, but also what are some of the challenges they're facing, and trying to find ways to support each other along the journey.
Yeah, I think that's a great, some great initiatives that you shared, Gabriella. It's important for organizations to understand the learning journey of their employees and what is working for them. You know, as you said, democratizing learning is very, very important. What works for them? How are they learning from their peers? What is working? What kind of content is working for them in terms of learning? So that's going to be very important. Gabriella, if you talk about your L&D priorities for the future, maybe say the coming 2 or 3 years, what are you trying to focus on as an organization?
From a learning and development, I would say there are two really key elements for us. We definitely want to continue strengthening our leadership capabilities. So leadership development is really important for us, particularly as we look at the changing times. And what does that mean from a leadership capability? You know, what we used to define as great leadership competencies 5 years ago, we have seen that with COVID and the changing environment and the multiple generations in the same workplace, that leadership capability or competencies need to evolve. You know, so there's a lot of focus that we're putting into enabling that, particularly talking a lot about how do we bring forward a more engaging leadership style, a more people-centric leadership style. So that I would say is our first big priority. The second one from a learning standpoint is enabling the digital transformation. So what does that mean from a learning capability, from a skill set, you know, and that's quite a big one, you know, because you go from looking at your IT team, you know, and speaking about how do you create, how do you move a transformation that perhaps is very premise dominated to moving into a cloud-based sort of setup. So that's a whole new different, you know, skill set. But then also talking about employees who are you know, in the office space, perhaps how to think more data driven, how to leverage on data, how do we drive decisions that are going to be strongly rooted in the data that we have available. How do we then also innovate more, you know, and then take on a more agile approach where we can really be listening much closer to our customers and making sure that whatever we're innovating is enabling and enhancing the customer experience. So the whole digital transformation is very big. It touches all corners of the organization, at all levels of the organization. So it's one that is keeping us awake at night.
Yes, and I think that's something that is keeping a lot of leaders awake at night in many organizations. I think two things that you pointed out, those two, you know, key trends going forward are going to be very important. Leadership went through a complete evolution in the past 2, 3 years, and digital transformation got accelerated at a speed that we had never seen before. So going forward, how do you focus on, you know, taking these two to the next level? I think that's going to be very important for HR leaders and L&D leaders. How do you build leaders for the future? future, and how do you prepare an organization which is digitally ready for the future? So thanks for sharing that, Gabriella. My final question to you is, how do you envision your L&D team going forward? What are the skills, or what is it that you want your L&D team to do going forward?
I would say continue leveraging a stronger consultative approach so that we can really be close to the business, understand the business so that we can also speak the business language when we interact with the business, and then make sure that whatever we are creating is fit for purpose, and making sure that we really design with the end in mind, with the user in mind, so that we can make sure that we're delivering a service that's going to add value.
That's beautifully put, Gabriella. Thank you so much. I think, yes, for an L&D team and for an L&D leader of the future, you have to be aligned to business, and you have to create programs for your people. You have to empower people to learn in the flow of work, and you have to ensure that your workforce strategy, your learning strategy is aligned with the business strategy.